Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Red Brick Summit 2020, we welcome you all to the TRBS Speaker Series. This year, TRBS has gone virtual, and we are extremely honored to host with us Mr. Rajan Singh. He completed his B.Tech from IIT Kanpur and served as an IPS officer for about 8 years. Post that, he pursued his MBA in finance from the Wharton School, where he was the Palmer Scholar for being top 5% of the class and was named in the director's list every semester. After working as the management consultant with McKinsey in New York and with a $1 billion private equity fund, he became an educational entrepreneur. He is the founder of HabitStrong, ConceptOwl, and CourseBrew. Today, he will share his experience on the topic Journey of an Entrepreneur. Audience members, we have shared with you a Google form over email, and the same has also been added in the YouTube description. So please feel free to add any question that you might want to ask, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So today what I would like to do is talk a little bit about, not so much about my journey, but essentially I'll try to pull out some lessons and talk about how I thought about my career at different points in time, the decisions I took, the mistakes I made, some lessons, and hopefully I'll be able to synthesize and extract something which might be of value to you. So let me just rewind the clock back a little bit and go back to about 1993, 94, 95. That was the time when I was in IIT and I graduated in 1995. And one question which many of you in the audience might be thinking about, if you're in let's say in IIM or any of the colleges, what comes next and how do you think about your career? How do you choose the right job? So I'm going to address some of those questions, but again, from the lens and from the vantage point of some of my own experiences. So when I was in third or fourth year, and that is the time when most of my classmates and classmates at IIT, they started thinking about jobs. And because it was our first job, we had no idea what a job is. So at that time, when you have not seen anything, the idea of a job, in your mind, you translate job as equivalent to salary, right? Which is, it's embarrassing, but that is true. That's what it was. So all of us would, I remember companies would come for placement. And in those days, a good salary would be roughly about 10,000 rupees per month. I know it sounds very small, but in those days, it was a pretty substantial amount. So when companies are lining up, you would look at the brand, etc., but everybody would be focused only on this one number. What is the salary? Nowadays, the word CTC is used more. In those days, it was a monthly salary. And the way we thought about it, the way everybody thought about it was, if a company pays 10,000, another pays like 11,000, then we would say, oh, that 11,000 company, it's better than 10,000 company. That was the universal conclusion. And nobody would ask further questions as to what does the company do? What is the role? What would I do there? Because at that point, when you have never worked in life, you don't really understand, at least I did not understand what it means, what a job really means, what goes into it. We always think about what comes out of it, and that also we quantify only in terms of salary. Is it a mistake? It's not a mistake. That's not the point of the argument. The point is that is the way I looked at it. A lot of my classmates looked at it, and that's also a way possibly many of you in the audience, you might be looking at it that way. So let's now explore, is that the right way to look at it? If not, why not? And again, I'm not trying to pontificate or make a moral argument or say this is how you should be doing. There's no should be here. Let's look at from a very practical point of view, if that approach is it right? Is it wrong? What are the downsides? So let's now think about it. Let's say you took up a job and you had a 10,000 rupee job, 10,000 equivalent nowadays. Of course, you guys make like a lot more money. So you had a 10,000 rupee job, you had 11,000 rupee job, you took the 11,000 rupee job or the equivalent of that today. Now you land on the job, you go to the company, you get your badge and everything, get a laptop and you start working. And then as you start getting into the groove, you realize that the first realization that comes to all of us is that in a job, you have to work with people. And sometimes people are good, sometimes people are bad. And that's something which never, when we thought about, 10,000 versus 11,000 versus 10,500, we never even asked the question, who are the people we are going to work with? What are they like? And that was not in, like, not a consideration at all. And now you feel like, and that really matters. Now imagine that you had a boss who was a sort of a micromanager. Now he or she expects you to do things his or her way, and if the slide doesn't look the way they want, or if something is different, they keep pointing fingers, they keep making your life miserable. And it's like, it's not a great experience. Now it's like week one on the job, you're not feeling that great, but then you remind yourself, oh, but that's okay, the company is going to pay me 11,000 bucks, right? So the initial euphoria of having a job now out of college and you're getting good salary, that sort of says, chalo theek hai, maybe not a great guy, but we'll manage. Then week two comes, then week three, and then month two, month three, and then you realize, man, that this is not going anywhere. At that point, once you have put in a couple of months, and God forbid, again, for most of us, that would not be a scenario, but I'm saying if you land up in that scenario where the people you work with, it's not a great environment, then you start hating it, you feel depressed, you feel anxious. One symptom of that is, if every Sunday night you have a dread you have like such a terrible dread that you don't want Monday morning to come, which means there is a problem. And a lot of us, unfortunately, at different points in life, we will face that. Now, it will not necessarily be because you have a bad boss. It could be any of the, could be a multitude of reasons, but this could be one of them. And then we realized that, what, 2 years back or 3 years back, when I thought about the job, when I thought about this 10,000 versus 11,000, I missed something huge. That was probably not the best metric to, or best way to evaluate a job opportunity. This was sort of one of the lessons that I learned, which is that what you get at the end of the month is just such a small part of what your overall experience is, that we are making a massive mistake. So I'm not saying you should not look at salary. That's not my point at all. My point is, be aware that there are many other things which matter just as much. I would argue way more than just the salary. There is another sort of tactical reason why you should think, why you should not ignore those factors. Remember, whatever salary you earn in the first, maybe even second, third, fourth year, at the end of the day, a little bit, 20-30%, 40% bump up here or there, it would not probably make a huge difference, when you look at your life 30-40 years later. So yeah, in the short term, it feels obviously nicer if you have more money, but it's not a game changer. So just keep that perspective in mind. So that is like one angle I wanted to sort of share with you. Now we talked about the people aspect. There is another aspect which we don't think much about, or that much about, which is, what am I going to do? Now let's say if I give you, now you guys are IIM graduates, and there'll be, in the audience, you might have people from other colleges. That's not material. Wherever you have some degree, and you're looking for a job, or you're going to start working maybe 2 years later, I'll give you a job which will, think about the best possible salary you can imagine. Okay, pick like whatever you want. I will double that salary. Okay, I'm going to double that salary. Obviously, you'll say it's hypothetical. Yeah, I agree, it's hypothetical. Let's go with hypothetical for some time. I'm going to double that salary and give you a job. But here's what the job involves. Every day you have to dig a trench. You take a shovel, you dig it up, and then next day you have to put the mud back and close it. I'll pay you double of the best thing that you can think of. How many of you will take up the job, and for how long? Now, somebody might say, okay, I'll do it for a month. Well, I understand, but let's put those on a serious note. If you had to do this thing for a long time, how many of you would want to do it? Most of us would probably say no, and especially if you've been to an IIM or been to an IIT, or you're a chartered accountant, or you've learned some skill. You want it to be meaningful and relevant for you. So now that brings a second idea, which is the work has to be meaningful. Now, what does that mean? A lot of people, they think of meaningful as like it's noble. No, there's no nobility here. Okay, you might be working for a gaming company which is making products, which are going to create distraction. But that's not the point. The point is, personally, when you do something, Are you finding it meaningful? And I'll give you a litmus test for that. Again, this is something that the way I think about it, I'm not saying that's a standard way people would judge if a job is meaningful. If your job involves doing activities, say ABC primarily, jobs will typically have lots of different things, but think about the primary responsibilities. If those tasks you have to perform day in and day out, and just imagine for a second that you had to perform that task, but you would not get paid any salary. There is no brand attached to it. You're not working in Facebook or Google. There is no one who's going to say, "Oh my God, you work in Google." When you meet people on weekend for parties, and you're not going to like stand out. Nobody knows the brand. So remove the brand, remove the money. Just look at the action, look at the task, look at the work. Would you still say, "Yeah, this makes sense for me to do"? Now you might say, "No, I need money." I get that, but I'm saying right now, put that aside for a second. Just think about the work itself, or the action or the task that you're performing itself in isolation. So without the sugar coating of job, of money and reputation, all those external factors, if you still think what I'm doing makes sense, then I think you're in a great place, because I would say that work for you is meaningful. Like I said, meaningful it does not have to be not for profit, doesn't have to be for profit, doesn't have to be in finance or banking, or it can be anything in the world. As long as you think this makes sense, that's good, I like it, that's it. Now, a lot of times what happens is we do things which you may not find meaningful, or at some point you find meaningful in the beginning, but at some point you, that sort of feeling dissolves or it just melts away. And I have this experience. So I joined the Indian Police Service in '96 after my B.Tech, and the first few years were amazing. Partly because the job was interesting. I mean, I found it interesting. Also, there was a lot of novelty. I mean, you're doing it for the first time, and you've never, all your education in technology has been something totally different. So it's a very different, very novel kind of thing. And I thought it was pretty interesting. And there were other things, which are the frills, if you can call it that, and the initial, how do you put it? Imagine that you're a student at IIT, or student at any place. You're a student, right? Nobody really cares. You're just, just a person. And 6 months later, or 1 year later, now you are in field, you're posted somewhere, and you find that when you say something, everybody in the room, including people who are 25 years more experienced and older than you, everything you say, they'll say, "Yes, sir." So you feel good, man. Like, yesterday I was a dummy. Now today everybody says, "Yes, sir." Whatever I say, they agree with me. It feels awesome. And so you get a kick out of it. And that kick it takes you some distance. And then once those things wear off, you get used to it. Then you start looking at the core of it. What I do, is that meaningful? Now, in my experience, when I was in nuclear service, there were certain things which I found exceedingly meaningful. One of them, obviously, was that your action does have an impact on safety, security, life and death of people. So to that extent, it is very meaningful. But a lot of the times, the actions that you're performing, after some time, they became, at least for me, very monotonous, repetitive, and I did not find it intellectually very challenging. It didn't seem to excite me. That thing, it's like Coca-Cola bottle. You keep it on the table for like 6 hours without the cap, the fizz is gone. So that's how it felt for me. And here's a question: whether you don't find the job very meaningful, or you don't like the people, or you may have some problem. But let's say you realize that you took up a job, you're very enthusiastic, and this could possibly happen to many of us. When we take the first job, we don't know what we're heading into, or it could be even second or third job. Now in that position where you say, "Okay, I've invested a couple of years of my life. Now what do I do next?" And in my case, in government service, as you can imagine, it takes much longer. The training itself is 2 years. So I realized it's about 5 to 6 years that I was still not yet 30, and I said, "Look, this is not something I want to do for the rest of my life." I was not enjoying it. Yes, there is reputation, all those things are there. What people now normally call social status, or whatever names you use for that. All that is there. Right? Reputation, that is aside, but it just did not feel that meaningful. Now, if you are in that situation, how should you think about it? So first response that you would have is that you would feel guilty. Like, man, like, I messed it up. How could I be so stupid? Why did I do this? Why did I not think about that? That guy, he was just like me. He was not even half as smart as me. He went there. Why did I not do that? You might possibly have all these thoughts. And if you don't have today, it's entirely possible you may have the thoughts 5, 10 years later, but it can happen. The thing to remind yourself if you get into that state is in that position is that life is like an adventure. When you go on an adventure trip, you expect fun things to happen, but there is no guarantee that you won't sprain your ankle or bust your knee or get injured. When people go, the more is the thrill, the tougher is the slope or the mountain you're climbing, the more is the risk of serious injury or death. So if you did something in the past, you had limited information, you did the best you can, at least you did something. And there is no way to know, there's no way you would have known at that point that this was the right or wrong decision. So first of all, that guilt, I know that just knowing it will not remove the guilt, but I think still it's worth keeping in mind that if you're feeling guilty, just remind yourself that it's all of this wisdom is retrospective. In retrospect, we all know all the answers. If you tell me what's going to happen tomorrow, please ask me that question day after tomorrow. I'll tell you exactly what is going to happen tomorrow. But don't ask me that question today. Today, I have no idea. Right? So the guilt is sort of something that you'll have, and I think that's something we need to consciously remind ourselves and modify our thoughts and let that go. Second thing, which is even more common, and I would say much more pervasive, is fear. What if I leave this job? What if I do something else? What if I do this and it doesn't work out? Now, I'm not making a case that fear is a misplaced emotion. Fear is a very, it's a good sentiment. It's good to have fear within limited measures, of course, limited degrees. But and we need to understand why we have fear. We have fear because fear is a sentiment which keeps us safe. Among our ancestors, maybe if you say 50,000 years back, there was a group of people, let's say, who had different DNA who did not have fear. What happened to them? They were not afraid. So they went in front of the wild animals and they got killed. So they could not reproduce. So their DNA strain is sort of, of their DNA is just gone. It's not there around anymore. So fear is what keeps us safe. However, fear has evolved in the forest and the wild. Today, very often, not always, but very often, fear does not serve us just as well. In fact, I would not be spending a lot of time making this argument, but our perception of fear, our perception of loss, we are skewed towards loss prevention. So just to give one example, let's say, if you were to take a bet, that okay, you take a bet, and if you lose the bet, you have to give me $1,000, and if you gain, I'll give you $1,000. This bet, and let's say the odds are 50-50. It's a balanced bet. You should be indifferent between taking this bet. There is enough research to show that you're not indifferent. Most people will not take that bet. And if the amount, instead of 1,000, if I make it like, let's say 100 crores, then depending on who you are, your behavior will change. So for a guy who has, let's say, if my net worth is, let's say 1 crore, even if I have 80% odds of winning the bet, but 20% odds of losing, I will not take a 1 crore bet because 20% chances I'll die. I'll lose all my money. The point I'm making is I'm not getting to the details, but the point I'm making is that our intuitive understanding of fear is not exactly accurate, and often it leads us in direction which is not very logical. So the fear is often overstated. In fact, I would argue that if you are so many of you guys, I'm guessing in the audience, you guys are from IIM or many of the top schools. If you start looking for a job at any point in your career, you'll find a job in a matter of 2 to 3 months max. Maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the time. But often when we are in a difficult situation, we don't think about that. We just panic. And think, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Very often, nothing will happen next. You'll do just fine. You go on LinkedIn and check profiles of people who have, with background like yourself, you'll find that very, very few people will have serious gaps in their experience. They quit a job, they found another job. No big deal. So this fear is not a great reason to stay stuck. However, the question you might have is, okay, now what should I do next? Like, should I switch my careers? Should I? One fear often people have is if I'm switching from career A to career B, totally different. How does it work out? Now, I have switched careers many times. So I went from Indian Police Service to consulting. From there, I went to investment, investing, and then I've been an entrepreneur. And this question comes up sometimes from youngsters. My take on that is, if you are thinking about switching careers, if you have built, let's say you have built your expertise and brand and knowledge in a particular area, it definitely makes sense to leverage it for sure. However, if you have to change career tracks, not always, but very often, we overestimate how much effort and time it takes to make a transition. When I went for my MBA, I did not have, I mean, you can imagine, I had done electrical engineering. I was not very good at it anyways, but that was my degree. And after that, I was in the police. So I had literally zero understanding, like zero as in like literally zero point 0.0 understanding of business. I did not know the difference between the word revenue and profit. For me, they all sounded exactly the same. And I went to a school which was pretty finance heavy, and I did a lot of finance. And honestly, I didn't feel like, I might say that, oh, I had a huge disadvantage, but no, that's not true. I had no disadvantage. In a matter of couple of weeks, not even months, you start learning something in 2 to 3 weeks, and you'll be at par with everybody else. So it's really, I would say, if you decide to, for some reason, if you decide to change your career trajectory, don't panic. Don't think too much about, I don't have experience, or I don't know the stuff. You can learn a lot of stuff. Now, obviously, if you have done something for 10, 15, 20 years, it makes sense to use that knowledge. But at the same time, early in your career, if you have to make a switch, don't panic too much about it. You can cover up. In most cases, I would say, generally, this is a broad argument. It's not necessarily true for every single scenario. Now, I've talked about people who end up in jobs where they don't like. Now, there could be a flip side. Let's say we end up in a job where we're comfortable, we like it, but I find a lot of us are there, but we are still unhappy because we are looking for this thing called passion. This is something I've heard like dozens and dozens and dozens of times, which is that I do this thing, but I'm not passionate about it. I want to discover my passion. Now, this is something which I think all of us, most of us, will sort of encounter this sentiment sometime in our life, maybe multiple times. Now, the question is, what is passion? How do you find passion? Is it it's a made up stuff, or is it like just people say it for motivational videos, or should you care about it? And there are different points of view. Some people will say that there's no such thing as passion. Just do anything that you do it well, and that's what life is. Some people believe that no, I have a natural calling. There's something which is right for me. What's the right answer? Now, before I don't have, by the way, I don't have a answer with any degree of finality, but I can share some thoughts here. Once I had written on this topic on LinkedIn, maybe about a year back, and there was one person, I'm forgetting the name. He responded. He was a very, very nice, very sweet response. I really liked it. So he said, I am a branch manager with a bank, and I love interacting with my customers. I try to serve them really well, and they in turn give me appreciation. My bosses and my team members, when they like me and they appreciate me, I feel really good, and I'm very happy, and I enjoy my job. Now think about it. Now what he's doing is he's not the CEO of HDFC or some big bank. He's not doing massive M&A, earth-shattering work, but he does stuff which he finds it exciting. Some people would, some people may not, and that's again a personal choice. But it is just what you're doing. It doesn't have to be spectacular. It has to be something which sort of resonates with you. You like it, and you find, yeah, this is good. Now, when we think about passion, can you say this guy has found his passion? Now, it doesn't look like he may not be doing something very dramatic, but I would say from his point of view, he has found something. He has found his passion. Now, passion is not, again, this is my very limited understanding. So I've not done huge research. I'm not like an expert on passion or anything, but I do not believe that there is a job. There is like one job which, when you see a switch will flip and suddenly music will start and you'll start feeling differently about it. That, I'm pretty sure you agree with that. That's not going to happen. So then what is passion? How do you discover your passion? I think going back to the earlier thing, when you talk about meaningful job, in my opinion, if you look at things that you enjoy doing, some people enjoy talking to people. They love human interaction. Some people like solving problems. Some people like solving quantitative problems. Some people just like solving vague abstract problems. Some people just like to close deals, or they like the high pressure situations. I don't know what's the activity or the action that makes sense to you, that you find interesting. Sometimes people may have preference for banking. Some people they find banking more interesting. I have seen in McKinsey people like I'm a shipping and transportation guy. For some reason, they find that exciting. I mean, I would not, but people do. So the answer there is, once you find something which sort of appeals to you, again, like I said, remove all the reputation, brand, money, this, that, all the other stuff, but you find that this is meaningful. And as long as the job that you're doing has enough of that, remember, there'll be no job in the world, obviously, where you get to do only things that you like. No one gets to do that. In fact, if you look at the CEO of a major corporation, I think they spend half, I don't know, I'm saying half randomly, it might be even more, the time doing like random meetings and random stuff, and most of it is not productive, but because you're there, you have to do it. So you will have stuff that you don't care. But if the thing that you genuinely care about, if your job has got that part in reasonably good measure, I think you're doing fine. That is, now it's up to you to spend some time, go deeper, become good at it, and that can be your passion. Once again, it's not that you do not flip a switch. You found something meaningful and go deeper, spend some time, become good at it. And I know people who have done that, and I can share real examples. In my last job, I was working with a private equity fund, and one of our partners, his name is Victor Menezes. Victor is a very, very well-known guy. He's an IIT Bombay graduate, and then after that he went to MIT, and he retired as senior vice chairman of Citigroup. Now he joined Citi, I believe, right after finishing his MBA from MIT, and then he spent all his life, I think must have been more than 30 plus years, in Citi, in just one company. And I'm guessing that he would have found it to be meaningful. He would have found his passion. And I remember once I was talking to him, and he said this to me. He said, he was quoting, he said, my grandfather or somebody told him that find a job that you like and you will never work for a day. And it's I think a very well-known saying, but that's what he quoted. And from what it seems like, he loved the job. He loved the company. He worked there for almost 30 plus years. He became the CEO of Citibank globally, and then ended up as senior vice chairman of Citigroup. Citigroup is the larger holding company. And that was, I think, if I'm not wrong, just like one level below the CEO, which was, I think, a very, very impressive growth. And without taking any risk, without doing crazy stuff, just doing a quote unquote regular job. It's not a regular job, it's a very prestigious job, but doing that for a couple of decades. He retired, he did well. In fact, if you go to IIT Bombay, you'll see a convention center in his name. He donated a couple of $1 million. It's called, I think, Victor Menezes, or some name after somebody in his family. I'm not sure. So there's a beautiful convention center, and all from like just doing something for his whole life. And the lesson there, I think, is once you find something good, something which people broadly connect with you, the work you do, you find it meaningful, it might make sense. I'm not saying it should always be the case, but it might make sense to stick there and spend a long time and make a good career out of it. If you look at the people who have risen to the top of their companies, take Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. He joined Microsoft almost 20 years back. And when he became the CEO, he must have spent, I don't know, 15, 16, I don't remember the exact number of years, maybe 16, 17 years before he became the CEO. Now, imagine, let's say, he joined in, I believe, let's say early 90s. After joining for 2 years, I'm pretty sure he's a very, very smart guy. I'm 100% sure that if he wanted to find a job which paid him 40% more, he could have easily, in a heartbeat, he would have found a job like that. And he could have hopped it a couple of times and 40% here, 30% here. And you guys, you're all quant guys, you know how to do compounding. You can kind of do the math and see, okay, that makes sense. But I think he would have highly, would have highly shock changed himself if he had done that. Once you find a good place, good company, good environment, everything suits, stay there, build your career, because once you spend some time, you get to know the people, you get to know how things work. And that might be, I'm not saying it always, but that might be a way to make some big leaps versus just trying to do these small, small jumps. Today, I think a lot of us just do way too many of these, 1.5 years jumps to get some extra. I'm not saying to get some salary, obviously that will be part of the picture, but it might not always be a good strategy, it might sometimes backfire. So this is one more thought. Again, I spend most of my time in the IPS, which wasn't government job. It doesn't pay you any money or anything. But again, this is a thought I want to leave on the table for you. So my personal career is, like I said, I joined the IPS, then I did my MBA. I joined McKinsey. Why I joined McKinsey? Because once again, you guys, many of you are in MBA program, so you know the whole story about consulting, problem solving. I like problem solving. I genuinely do. So that's something which really excites me. Thing that I don't like, as an example, I don't like talking to people. So I would be the most horrible sales manager or sales leader or salesperson you can imagine. Like I'll be the absolute, if not rock bottom, like very close to rock bottom. But I like problem solving, and I thought that is what will work for me. I did that for a while, and I figured that I wanted to do something different, especially investing. And that job was amazing. My last job after leaving that, I joined a private equity fund called New Route. And I would say if you guys love finance, by the way, investing, it's amazing. It's one of those jobs, by the way, which I think the job is just as good as it is touted to be. Very often you expect something, but when you go, you get like a fraction of that. Investing, it lives up to its promise and reputation and the image, so to say, that we have. I worked there for a couple of years, and then I came across a lot of entrepreneurs and saw people doing various things, building companies. And that's when I thought that if I don't want to live my life and then have this regret later, why did I not do this? Why did I not try something? Now, different people have different organizing principle for their life. My organizing principle, again, not very consciously, but unconsciously, the principle that I see is I've been more in a regret minimization framework. So I don't want to leave things and then think about, I should have done this. So if I feel like that very strongly, I would rather do it and see what happens and face the consequence. I have, right now I run HabitStrong. It's a startup. We are into habit building. And what we do is we run, right now we just started a couple of months back. We run these very intense programs to help people build discipline and focus. One of our programs, we help them overcome their digital distractions, build a solid morning routine, essentially make discipline and focus the core part of their life. And this is something which I do because this is how I live my life, and this is my conviction. Even if it was not a business, I would still want to do exactly the same thing, because I've tried many of these things and I've found that we all struggle in lives in so many different ways, and we look for magical solutions. And in some sense, while there is no magic, there is some magic. And the magic lies in these very simple, dumb things. Have a good morning routine, have a thought process, think about how you want to interact with social media, online platforms. Think about how you can bring focus to your work, how you can bring a focus to learning. And I believe that a life of focus and discipline, in my personal opinion, is the answer to living a happy and a good life. And since I believe in that, I want to propagate and make that idea take roots and spread it. Obviously, it's a startup, so we also have to make it profitable and grow it. But more than just the startup part of it, I like the what I do. So just going back to what I find meaningful, so this is something I find deeply meaningful. In fact, every single day I wake up at 4:45, 5 o'clock I do my live meditation sessions. Some days are easy, some days are hard, and that's okay. But I really believe that what we are doing as a company, I think it adds a lot of value, and it's a meaningful thing to do. It's not a very popular thing to do, for sure. When people, obviously, they love easy things. We don't have easy stuff. We have all difficult stuff, but it makes sense. It makes people, it gives long-term satisfaction, peace of mind, and so on. That's what I do right now. And before I wrap it up, I'll take a couple of questions which probably might come. One question which might come as when we think about what kind of, let's say there's a job which you sort of like partly, you don't like partly. So should we stick to that job, or should we try to look for something like, which is a better fit for us? Now there are a couple of schools of thought. One school of thought is find what you love. Remember we talked about passion earlier. So find what you love and do that. Don't do other stuff. There's another school of thought which says that no job is perfect. So you'll never find something which you love. So it's all the same. There are good things and there are bad things in every job. All jobs are broadly the same. So don't chase anything. Just do your best and try to do the best you can in whatever job you have. So the one question you might have is that the right answer? Should we just recognize that sometimes life just sucks and there's nothing perfect, therefore we do whatever we are doing, just keep doing it? Or should we chase the rainbow? That's a question you might have. And I want to just share my take on that. I agree that every job will have some ups and downs. Even when we talk about people, even in a great job, great company, you will have sometimes people with whom you don't work well, and you'll have some folks you work well, and this might change over time. But apart from these small ups and downs, at the core level, in terms of the culture of the organization, what the mission is, what people there believe in, and the work that they do, whether you have a connect with that or not. And my belief is that if at the fundamental level, if you feel that I don't really connect with what they're doing, I don't connect with the people, I don't connect with the way they think, even if other things are fine, then I think you should go for chasing the rainbow, which is not like chasing the rainbow as in like chase unrealistic things, but then maybe you need to course correct and find something which works. But just because there are ups and downs and there are good days and bad days, that may not be the reason. So this is a fine distinction I want to make, which is that yes, all jobs are imperfect, but sometimes the imperfection is a fundamental disconnect. Sometimes it's just a transient thing. And finding that out, I think, is your job. So if you feel ever disconnected, ask this question: am I fundamentally disconnected with the people, organization, mission, everything? If yes, then look for something different. One last question before I close my talk is talking about brand. You get a job at Google and you get a job at a startup, you get a job at some other company. Should you go for a brand? Should you not worry about it? Does brand matter? Does it not matter? Now, the answer, in some ways, it's an obvious answer. The brand matters because, by definition, brand is something what people recognize. And if you have a Google or Facebook or Amazon or McKinsey or Goldman or some brand like that, when you go for the next job, things are easier, people respect you more. All that is true. But also the flip side is that what people perceive is what people perceive. But what they perceive is not what you live. Whether you're working at Facebook or at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or I don't care, any company, any organization, at the end of the day, you have to live your life. Others are only going to see a snippet of that from outside. My take is that if you have a fundamental disconnect with the work there, or if you just feel that this is just not right, don't kill yourself just in the name of brand. It's probably not worth it. Life is short. You're not going to live for a million years. And even though I have worked in branded companies and branded organizations, my belief is that yes, if you get an opportunity and if it makes sense, if there's a broad connect, absolutely having a better brand is incredibly valuable. There's no question about it. But at the end of the day, the life that you live is for you to live. Nobody else can live it for you. And brand is for other people. The real experience is for yourself. So that's the distinction that I would like you to keep in mind. And one last thing before I sort of hand over the mic, so to say, to the organizers, is that sometimes we just want to collect brands. You go to an IIM, go to an IIT, go to MIT, go to Harvard, Stanford, go to this, go to that. And you want to collect those brands, and those brands help. But remember, in Hindi, there's a saying, when we were in college, they used to say, thappa lagana, which means you get a stamp. So these brands, they're like a stamp. They help. So if you think of yourself as a package, so if the stamp is there, the package will move. It will go to the next destination. But remember, at the end of the day, the package has to reach the destination. If you just keep getting stamped again and again and the package is not moving, then there is a problem. So yes, brand is valuable, but remember the brand is the sort of a facilitator. It helps you get to the destination. The ultimate goal is not the brand. Ultimate goal is to get to the destination, which is not some, which is not again a rainbow. The destination is just something that you find it's meaningful, and along with that, of course, you make as much money as you feel comfortable, etc., etc. All those things are there. Once you get there, enjoy your time, live a life well. Don't be, try to be a little bit fearless. Don't worry too much about what will happen. Nothing will happen. Life is fine. Take your chances, and hopefully things will all go well. That's it from my side. I don't have anything else to say. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir, for your talk. We received a plethora of questions from the audience, but a lot of them were already covered in your talk. So I'll be just asking you one last question, which has been asked a couple of times. There are so many people who are motivated by the idea of entrepreneurship, but generally they lack the idea for the same. What would your advice or guidance be for them to figure out the path?
Okay. There are once again two schools of thought here. So one school of thought is that ideas don't matter, execution matters. And another school of thought is that, okay, if you don't resonate with the idea, then, if it doesn't resonate with you, then you really can't make much progress. Now, I believe that the truth is somewhere in the middle, that yes, I think ideas matter, but ideas only matter if you can put your life and death force behind it and make something happen out of it. Now, how do you get ideas? And that's I think a great question. It sounds like a stupid question. It's actually not. It's an excellent question. I believe that there are a couple of ways of doing it, and there is no standard answer. So one thought process which you'll hear in the startup world is scratch your own itch. Pick a pain point which you have experienced yourself and try to solve them. And you will see a lot of people having done that. If you look at, let's say, Dropbox, when the founder Drew, when he started the company, somebody asked him, like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't have a way to, I don't have a good cloud storage thing. I'm struggling, so I'm building it for myself. Many other people have done that, but I also know successful entrepreneurs who have done stuff which is very different from what they've done in their life. So while there is no cookie cutter answer, there's nothing to say that, okay, it has to be something which you are personally familiar with, but does give you a huge advantage. But there's one thing for sure, which is that whatever problem you pick up, and this is something I've learned mostly through mistakes. This is not through my great stuff or whatever. I've made a lot of stupid mistakes, and one of the big mistakes was that you take up a problem, you don't go deep into it. You understand at a broad level, but remember, in a startup, there is no. I mean, if I can go and start a business in a startup, you're not going to invest like $1 billion from your war chest. You're just going to start something. By definition, in most cases, a startup is starting off as a low entry barrier business at the beginning. So if you can do a startup, 20 other people like you can also do the same startup or similar startup. And for you to succeed, you have to have some advantage. Earlier, I used to think that this whole idea that you have to have some unfair advantage, I think this is like a stupid idea. What advantage did Mark Zuckerberg have? Nothing. Well, that is true. And sometimes some people get lucky. Sometimes the timing is right. I'm not saying Zuckerberg got lucky. That's not my point. The point is that for some people, the things click faster. But whatever you are doing, if you have intuitively or through experience, if you have a really good understanding of the pain point, I think that's a good place to start, number one. Number two is when you start building things, first of all, try to, and people who asked in the audience, I'm sure you must have read ideas like MVP and the idea of not building something. First, try to build the MVP and validate the idea, product market fit, those kind of things. The whole lean startup idea. I used to think that it is not practical, but over time, after a lot of failures and a lot of hard knocks, I've realized that that's the only true idea out there. If you ask me if there is a science behind startup, there's a lot of randomness, but there is some science. And that science, the lean startup idea that those folks from Silicon Valley, they gave, that thing actually works, which means that you have to figure out, okay, this is a problem. And when you create a solution and you give it to people, if they don't like it, Very often our response is, no, they don't like it because I don't have this thing. If I build the whole thing, they will love it. No. If you have to build everything, if you have to build you're trying to solve a financial services problem and you're saying, no, if I build a whole bank with 10,000 people, only then they're going to love it, then there is a problem. If the solution is really, really effective, people should be willing to consume that, even if it is half done, patchy, it doesn't have proper UI, UX. Don't worry about all that. In HabitStrong, just as an example, we started the product. We had nowhere. Even today, we have not built the tech. The total amount of code we have written for HabitStrong till now, total number of lines of code is 0. And for next 2 months also, the number of lines of code we are going to write is still 0. We will write it at some point, maybe 6 months later, because at that point, I will know exactly what does the customer want? What are the gaps? Why do we need technology? Very often we put, we'll build a tech. I don't care, don't build the tech. Don't do AI, don't do a machine, but don't do any of that, that jazzy stuff. First figure out, if I do this, will the customer like it or will he not like it, he or she? Second, will they pay for it or will they not pay for it? I know it's not a very popular idea. No, talk about money. No, you have to remember, if people are not paying for it, I might be just wasting my time. Maybe it's got no value. The only way you know if there is value is when people are willing to pay for it. And it has to happen at a very small scale. Also, you should be able to get some people who are willing to pay for your product. So this is my suggestion. Pick something that you really understand. Your understanding the problem has to be deeper than the next 20 guys who are trying to get there. How do you do that? That's up to you. Research, talk to people, get there. If you spend some time in the industry, all that is good. And then try to get some people to pay for that. By the way, it's very, very frustrating. When you do that, you will fail, you will feel terrible. But misery is part of startup life. All that glory that somebody raised, 100 billion from SoftBank and all that is nonsense. It will happen for some people, it'll happen later. So like a kid is born, the marriage will happen, and then the first job will happen much later. First you need to get in the kindergarten, right? So worry about that first. So I think this is my answer. Start slowly, and once you have people who are willing to pay for your product, and ideally if they want to really jump on your product, then do whatever you want. After that, there's no problem. Getting to that point, by the way, it's very, very hard. That's what you should focus on. That's it from my side.
Thank you, sir, for the answer. Overall, also, on behalf of the entire team of TRBS, I would like to thank you for such a truly insightful session. I am certain that each and every person in the audience took something very valuable from your talk. Well, on that note, I would also like to thank the audience for being so patient and enthusiastic today, for all their questions and involvement in the session. And finally, I would like to thank Business Standard, our financial print media partner, for their support. Next, we have a very interesting session on Fireside Chat on Entrepreneurship and Startups by Sanjeev Bigchandani. Don't forget to tune in for that. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, sir, for the talk.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.